Entrevista realizada en el municipio de Vélez Blanco, Almería, con motivo del seminario Desafíos para la Paz en el siglo XXI, celebrado del 21 al 23 de julio de 2010.
I work at being a peaceful person. I try to imagine new ways of engaging in peace. I think like Irene Khan, I think peace is a verb, not a noun, so you do peace. And always try to find ways to enact peace with justice. Violence for me is a very unimaginative way to deal with conflict. It's much easier for us to use one-dimensional power, to use power over other people, to hit people instead of finding other ways. And for me, that's a very unimaginative way of living and being in the world. And for me, positive peace, peace with justice, is a much more creative and imaginative way of dealing with violence. So violence needs to be confronted with non-violence, always. Violence confronted with violence is a cycle. So we need to find non-violent ways to respond to violence. In Australia, one of the key peace with justice issues is our treatment of the Indigenous people. And it's important to find ways to deal with oral cultures, oral traditions, in ways that encompass their view. So I work with the government and communities to find ways to cope with violence in their communities using Indigenous practices, Indigenous knowledge. This is more helpful than state imposed punishments for these communities. We teach at the Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies, and we have interdisciplinary classes and inter-regional classes. So the students learn from each other about conflict and violence and peace in different parts of the world. So this is very encouraging for me. I learn very much from my students. And then our centre also does advocacy work. So we do advocacy projects that involve the students and involve the public. One is running the Sydney Peace Prize, which is a public lecture where leaders of peace are invited to come and talk about peace with justice in different ways. Economic justice, political justice, social justice, and how we can define and redefine peace. I think one of the challenges we face is this unequal distribution of resources. I think as long as good quality of life means more money and more things, more possessions, I think we need to redefine this quality of life indicators. And so we're not controlled by money and time, and therefore we don't broaden the gap between rich and poor. I think we need to use our imaginations to think of ways that we can challenge this culture, this language of violence, economic violence. And, we have enough money and resources to address poverty. Let's find ways to do this. So I think this is a big obstacle to our, the market, our economic riches make us work. All our time is spent making money, so we don't have any time to look after one another. This is a problem for us. In Australia, we have a very unimaginative political system. And I think that we can do more work as scholars and practitioners of peace with justice. I think we can do more work about what creative leadership is about, what power sharing is about. We have political leaders who lack courage. They lack courage to put their hand up, to represent the disadvantaged, and a good example is Australia's treatment of asylum seekers. People who need humanitarian assistance, mostly Afghani and Sri Lankan asylum seekers fleeing terrible violence. And all Australia can do is say, no, you can't come. This is a very unimaginative, uncompassionate position. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for other responses to this. We just need to use our intelligence and imagination and create a language where the other person is not demonized. We need to be more compassionate. I think there's a great capacity for that in humanity, and I think it's a lack of courage not to show it. And presently, Australian governments on all levels, national, local, systems of government are confined by rules and policy, and there's not much flexibility in reinterpreting that language. So on saying that, Australian civil society at a local level is active. Overwhelmingly, Australians showed their support to not invade Iraq. Overwhelming public opinion was not to join the coalition of the willing. And still our government did this. But I think that civil society is very important too. We need to wake up and spend less time in the gym and more time thinking about our life, our quality of life, what's important to us. And Australian civil society can do it.